Testing 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
voice can be heard in this room perfectly well. I can promise you it can't be heard in Antrim County. So anything that's going to be broadcast has to go out through the microphones. So again, please turn off your phones and remember that we're being broadcast, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, how you doing, man? Good, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Candidate Forum sponsored today by the League of Women Voters of the Grand Traverse Area and hosted by the Traverse Area District Library with technology and media support from Traverse Area Community Media. This Candidate Forum is for the office of Mayor of Traverse City and 3 open seats on the City Commission. My name is Christina Schlitt, co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Traverse City League, and my co-president, Cheryl Naparella, is also around. She was greeting you in the hallway. The League of Women Voters is a national, nonpartisan organization. That means the League never endorses nor opposes candidates or political parties, but does work to obtain and share information to the public about candidates and their views. The League promotes the informed and active participation of all citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues through education and advocacy. And we advocate only when we have a well-researched and developed position. Membership is open to women and men 16 years or older, and we offer a special discount to students of any age. This forum today is being shown on channel 189 with Spectrum Cable in Northwest Lower Michigan and on TACM Community Media website at tacm.tv/community TV now, and of course here with you today. Our moderator today is a 40-year member of the Grand Traverse League, Jean Howard. Jean is active in the community on the board of Women's Resource, Munson Healthcare, and the College Foundation. She was a member of the TCAPS Board of Education for 8 years. Jean?
Thank you. Good evening to our candidates for mayor. We have 2 candidates, Tom Mayer and Amy Shamrow. So welcome, and welcome to the audience. We will begin with a 1-minute statement, opening statement from each candidate, followed by questions from the audience. Each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer the question. A timer has cards visible to the candidates, and when the 15-second card is up, please wrap up your comments because I will enforce the time limit. We will close the forum with 1-minute closing statements from the candidates. If you have a question for the candidates, we already have several that have been submitted, please write it legibly because I have to read it, on the card. Raise your hand. We have league members at the end of the aisles that will be collecting your questions, and then they will be reviewed by our screeners who look for relevance, propriety, clarity, and legibility. We probably will not have time to ask all your questions, but we do collect them and then send them all to the candidates after the forum. There will be no oral questions from the audience. And in the interest of promoting civil discourse, we ask that you show respect for all the candidates by refraining from cheering, booing, or applauding. If you cannot hear a candidate, please raise your hand. We will ask them to speak more directly into the microphone. And before we begin, I would once again like to remind you, please make sure all your electronic devices are turned off. So we will begin with the opening statements going by alphabetical order for the candidates. And I will rotate between the candidates so that each candidate will have the opportunity to answer a question first. And you may always ask me to repeat a question if you don't don't understand it. So Tom, you may begin with your opening statement, please.
Thank you. And first, some other thanks. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for holding this event. This is a key event in the run-up to the November 7th election. And also that it's at this date because somewhere out in the mail are absentee ballots. I don't know if anybody's received one, but usually this event was held later, closer to Election Day, so I really applaud them for having it earlier. I have a lot of friends in the audience, and I'm glad to see the support. I thought I might start on something light. A couple things you wouldn't know about me. Some people do, but I lead a poetry group, and I've been leading one monthly group now for 9 years, and it's called Poets Meet Musicians. And we use books like this, poetry books, and we read poetry and we write poetry. But I'd like to also say that the downtown water main, that's the circuit of water that would suppress a fire downtown, is in need of repair, and that would be my top concern for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Thank you all for having us here tonight, the library, the League of Women Voters, and so many people for showing up. It's always great to see civic engagement everywhere, whether it's at meetings or at forums like this, in a good community like ours that's so engaged. I'm Amy Shamrow. I've been on the City Commission for the last 8 years. I've been Mayor Pro Tem for 6 years of that. I'm also born and raised in Traverse City, and that's something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud I've been able to come back here and be part of the community as an adult, something that I didn't always think was going to be possible because Traverse City has changed so much since then, since I was young. So I just am really glad to be able to participate in this decision-making process as part of our community, and hope over the years that I've shown people that not only do I listen, but I also think that information is very important to us, and that's where I'd like to see us as a city improve, is doing a better job informing and presenting information to the community, and that'd be one of the tenets that I'm running on.
Thank you. Amy, the first question will go to you. Do you believe that the City Commission is listening to the city residents in regard to the proposed zoning changes? If yes, why? If no, what would you change?
Well, that goes back to, I think that the City Commission is listening. We've already taken some items off. We've already having more discussions on items as a whole, or individually as opposed to the package as a whole. I do think that the communication to roll it out could have been better. I think that where it ends is going to be totally up in the air still. There's still more decision-making to go in that process. But that is the process. The process isn't, it's not popular with everybody, so you don't talk about it. We have to talk about it, and then we get to the decision process. So I think that that's really important to remember, is the discussion is part of the community discussion, and what happens after that is where we have to be listening to make it the best thing we could pass or not pass it at all. And I think there's some things that won't make it through, and there might be one or two that do.
Thank you. Tom?
Yes, as far as residential zoning, this is where the opposites probably begin. I wouldn't change anything at this point, and I think it needs more public input. I think this is being sped up because they probably have the votes right now to pass this before the election. And I would say that we're at a fork in the road, and we have to choose between two candidates, pretty easy, small field, and that my opponent feels one way and I feel the opposite way. I would not even attempt to change the residential zoning at this point.
Thank you. Next question, Tom. You may answer this one first. I would like to know how each of you would vote on the new housing density ordinance.
The housing density ordinance, that has to do with making a lot size 35 feet, I think. That has something to do with it. I don't want to change any of the residential zoning standards right at this time. And I would think that in the future, when a building like the one on Oak Street, which is supposed to be a home and looks more like a small hotel, that we don't make mistakes like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
I guess I'd need a little clarification if they mean the whole package, that all of that potentially could add density, or if it's about the lot sizes. Right now, I'm not a fan, I don't think I'd go for these setbacks. The permeable surface, perhaps with what we've added being the required stormwater treatment on site. Right now, I'm leaning towards ADUs, but against lot splits, I'm still not seeing that that is entirely a great decision or necessarily for everything that we've got going on right now. And there's 6 of them, sorry, I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head. But as a whole, I think that there's a couple things we can do that will help to add to the housing stock without adding too much density, but the whole package is too much.
Thank you. Amy, next question. What would you do to promote a city response to climate change issues?
Well, that's something I've already been working on. As a member of the Light and Power Board, we both started and set the 2040 green energy goal with the 2025 40%, which we're already, I think we're right about to hit 41. So we've already done that with the utility. At the same time that was going on, the city set an energy goal that we did hit in 2020. But now we have got the climate action plan that we're working on, and that will be rolled out in the early winter. And I think that that not only is a good plan for the utility, I think it's going to be a great roadmap for the city, and that's going to inform everything from our policies on buying and standards, as well as our own best practices for our own buildings.
Same question.
Well, I'm an environmentalist, I'm an ecologist, and I think we need to add conservancy into this plan. We need to turn lights down. I live near the airport runway near by Division and Front Street, and they have tuned those lights down a little bit, but that was just much too much. And some of these lights need to be shut off. If we shut off lights, we're going to save quite a bit of energy. And we have to get off of fossil fuels. We have to get off of coal. By the way, we have a natural gas-fired power plant that's just south of Kalkaska. You might not know that. It's a light and power plant, actually, that runs on natural gas. Natural gas, it'd be nice to get off of that too, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. We need to be conserving our energy. That's my position on that.
Okay, Tom, question 4. The only regional money Traverse City receives to help support infrastructure comes through tax increment financing, or TIF. Do you support the expansion of TIF? If so, why? If you don't, what funding sources would you seek to make up for the money?
Well, this is the second fork in the road issue. I would say, at this point, not being the mayor at this point, not extending or renewing TIF 97. There was a promise made some 26 years ago that it would run 30 years, and that doesn't mean 35 or 40 years. And I think that if that's not enough, I can offer even a suggestion, because you should have an answer if there's a problem. And the answer would be a new TIF. And you could make the language probably a lot better fitting to this current situation if you could pass it. But the agreement is 26 years old, and 26 years ago, things were quite a bit different here. And the laws have changed about TIF and brownfields. And I think the contract for that, I have requested a copy from Gene Dorenzi. It should have got to me before today so that I would have a chance to look at it. But I plan on reading it, and I doubt very many people are going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Amy, a TIF question?
Yes, so right now, we don't have a TIF plan in front of us, so I can't say 100% whether I would agree with it or not. What I would be looking for in any TIF plan that comes before us is revenue sharing. So as opposed to capturing it all and sitting on it for 30 years, portions of that money would be given back every year. But also, I think we have to be very cognizant of the fact that right now, that's $4 million that gets paid by downtown, that gets reinvested in downtown. If that goes away, it's the only capture that we have from the county, and that will just go away. That will not be, everybody will be able to opt out of it if we were to reset it. So that'd be $2 million we would lose right off the top for taking care of the Boardman Nottoway and the downtown itself in maintenance, even if we don't do another project. That then goes on to the burden of the taxpayers. The money that would go into the general fund would be only $2 million.
Thank you, Amy. What is the one thing, Amy, you would do to make Traverse City better for its residents as mayor?
Well, as mayor, the reality is that we are one of 7 votes, but we are the leader of the discussion, and I think it's important to make sure that at every meeting, every commissioner's voice is heard, that people aren't feeling that they can't express their opinions or they're being talked over or interrupted. And that sounds simple, but it's a lot of the conversation. That also applies to the public comment and how we engage with the public. So I think that making sure everybody in the community feels heard is very important. There's going to be a bunch of issues over the next 2 years, and they're going to change all the time. But as long as we are communicating and listening and making sure that everything people get from the very first go helps them to understand what we're doing, that opens that conversation up and makes it so much better for everyone.
Thank you. Tom?
What I would do is I would do what we're planning to do tonight, and that is vote. We probably should be voting on residential zoning changes. We probably should be voting on TIF. And we should definitely be voting when something comes up for a park, like the Union Street Dam Park. We still don't have a beginning of Fish Pass, and there's a reason for that. It's because there was a person here in town, the common man, he sued because it was supposed to be a vote. And the city, I heard this from the city, we don't want to vote because we might lose. That's just not acceptable. We need to vote more often, perhaps. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, next question. What good or not so good and the bad of growth and change have you seen in Traverse City? Or what does, and then there's another question that follows it that says, what does good growth look like in Traverse City?
I think good growth looks kind of like what town looks like. I think we are in a pretty good position. I remember when I moved to here in '87, things were a lot different, and downtown was making a comeback, which was the reason for TIF, by the way. It was because of declining property values and declining downtowns in Michigan. That's why TIF came about. But basically, I would take a look at some of the odd structures in town that went through the planning process, and then afterwards, I would ask the planner, what happened? And I would hear things like, well, I didn't think it was going to look like that. Incredible. I would also go back and say that one of our problems is that we're way ahead on developing the city, and we're not taking care of infrastructure. And I'll tell you, more than once, that circuit of water downtown, that's an accident waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, same question.
Sure. To me, good growth looks like gentle infill where there's room for it. It doesn't mean that we have to cram everything in every corner. But I do think that as somebody who was born and raised here, I also remember when downtown closed up at 6 o'clock every night. And that has been grown because of TIF, as was said, but I think it's also a delicate ecosystem that we can't just say, okay, you've had enough now for the last 30 years, we're shutting off all the resources and you're just gonna keep thriving as you were. Whether that's TIF or that's something else, we have to be very careful about that. I think that we as a city have just continued to become more attractive, and that's gonna be what we are because of this. And so that is a balance that we have to look at of being able to provide resources and services to people, but also make sure that people who live here and are paying taxes are first priority.
Thank you. Next question is, those experiencing homelessness have been more visible this summer. So what is one thing the city could do to respect the right of those living without shelter while still respecting the concerns of the neighbors and the businesses that are impacted?
Is that me? Sorry.
Amy.
Sorry, I forgot which order we were in. So I guess I would say there isn't one thing we can do. And that's unfortunate. We all want to be able to say there's one magic thing we can do. I think that the police department has been, with our social worker we've just hired, have been working very hard on trying to get resources for those experiencing homelessness as they encounter them and as they can find help for them. I know a lot of programs are starting to look at better wraparound housing services, and finding permanent housing is obviously the solution to homelessness. But there's also some other things that are going on that I think we'll be getting some presentations on shortly to help eliminate a lot of the chronic homelessness over the next 5 years. And I'm very excited about that program being presented to us. So there isn't any one thing we can do, but there are a lot of groups working right now with the city to make a solution more permanent.
Thank you. Tom?
I think we need to work on an individual basis with many of the homeless people. I have homeless friends. I have people who are friends of mine, they live in their car, and they have jobs. I also have a friend who got a voucher to get an apartment, but there were no apartments available. So there are actually more vouchers available than there are spaces. So I think each case of being homeless is different, and it can be so many different events that can happen in someone's life, from losing a job to a loved one spending all the money on health care. It's just anything is possible. And the reason people are homeless isn't because they chose to be. I mean, there may be some people that want to do that, but most people really would rather find shelter. And I'd like to see that there maybe discuss individually with each homeless person how it started and what they would like.
Okay, we only have about 4 minutes left here for these two candidates. This is how fast the time goes. So I have two yes and no questions to ask you real quickly, and then we'll go into closing statements. The first is the fire department will be on the ballot in November. Do you support this issue? Yes or no?
I definitely support it. I live near the fire hall on Front Street, and I think it's a great bunch of people working there. I think we need to make some modifications, but basically, yes. Yes on that proposal.
Amy?
Yes, I've actually been endorsed by the firefighters local 646, and I think when, having been on the ad hoc that examined that, the future is that we have to be able to provide our own transport because the surrounding areas are doing it already, and it's only going to get tighter for us to work with an outside service.
Okay, just a yes or no on this one.
I'll set a
It's
precedent.
always hard when you're a candidate. You want to explain. Amy, do you support book banning, yes or no?
No, I'm on the Friends of the Library Board.
Tom?
N-O.
Okay, thank you. You can now do your opening, closing statements, and we will go with Amy first.
Okay, well, this is the Reader's Digest condensed, just like all the answers have been. There's a lot more to discuss. I'm always happy to meet with people at their home, have a coffee, have a chat, meet with your neighbors. It's how we best communicate. I think these short answers are great to give you a snippet, but they're not the whole picture, and there's a lot of nuanced, complicated issues that we're going to be facing. And that's the reality, is they aren't yes or no, or they're not 45 seconds. And that's where I like to bring thoughtful leadership and open up to listening to all the voices that are in the room so that we can find the best solution. It may not be exactly what one person wants, but hopefully it's something that will help to move the city forward in a positive way that prepares us for the future, while also acknowledging where we are today and respecting the people that we have in our community today. I'm a lifelong resident. This is a city I love. I'm not trying to turn this into Chicago, and I don't want to see us lose a lot of our character that makes us so special. This is a really magical place, and I've really loved representing it for the last 8 years, and I hope you'll allow me to represent it for 2 more leading the next commission.
Thank you. Tom?
I think the fork in the road issues are on residential zoning, and I don't think upzoning is it sounds like it's positive, but it may not be. We won't really know what will happen. And once you do it, you won't be able to go back and redo it, because once you add value to property, you can't take it away. It's like a benefit to an employee, very difficult to take back. So I suggest not doing it, and not doing it in a hurry, definitely. TIF 97 and housing, those are probably the 3 top issues, but there's many more. I'm really concerned about infrastructure. I was county commissioner. I got elected in 16, and I served in 17 and 18. And in 18, I voted on a brownfield project that was going to fix this water main. And I've just checked with several sources in City Hall in the last couple days. It's on a list, and nobody's done anything. And I'm really kind of bothered by that, because when I voted for it, I thought things actually happened when you voted for them. It's not right, and we have to change. We have to change the way the democracy is handled, like the park, the fish pass thing. These delays could be prevented. Voting, people need to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Well, thanks to both Tom and Amy for taking the opportunity to run for this very important local office. We appreciated hearing from both of you. Let's give them a round of applause. We'll take a 5-minute break to get ready for our city commission candidates. candidates ready?
Yes.
Good evening once again. I would now like to introduce the 9 candidates running for the City Commission. Jackie Anderson, Kenneth Funk, Caroline Kennedy, Mary Mills, Chris Minkin, Shay O'Brien, Merrick Roman, Heather Shaw, and Mitchell Treadmill.
Treadwell.
We will begin with a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate, followed by questions from the audience. So each candidate, you'll have 45 seconds to answer a question. And again, the timer has cards visible to all of you, and when the 15 seconds are up, please wrap up your response. I will enforce the time limit. We will close the forum then with a 1-minute closing statement from all the candidates. If you have a question for the candidates, please write it on your cards that have been handed out. If you need a card, raise your hand. If you have a question written on a card, please hand it to one of our League of Women Voters members who are pacing up and down the side halls here. Questions will be collected and reviewed by screeners who look for relevance, propriety, clarity, and legibility. Legibility being very important for the reader, please. We probably will not have time to ask all your questions, but we do collect them and send them to all the candidates. Once again, no oral questions from the audience. And in the interest of promoting civil discourse, we ask that you show respect for all the candidates by refraining from cheering, booing, or applauding. If you cannot hear a candidate, please raise your hand. We will ask them to speak more directly into the microphone. And again, please make sure all your electronic devices are turned off. So we'll begin the opening statements now by going in alphabetical order and we will then move down the line so each candidate will have a question, an opportunity to answer a question first. And if I miss somebody, let me know. I'm trying to keep track up here on this grid, but sometimes it gets difficult when there's this many candidates. So be patient with me. So Jackie, you may begin with your opening statement.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to you all who are here tonight. I'm Jackie Anderson. I'm a Michigan native and a resident of Traverse City for the last 23 years. I earned an MBA from Michigan State and spent my entire career either working in business or teaching business. I've also been a very active volunteer in our community on things like raising $750,000 to save Easling Pool and acting as a SCORE advisor to small business for 5 years, and most recently, co-founding the Indian Woods Neighborhood Association. I believe the 3 most pressing issues for Traverse City today are, number 1, housing supply and cost. Number 2, balancing the needs of downtown with the needs of the rest of the community. And number 3, resolving a gap in trust and communication between our government and our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
My name's Ken Funk. I'm currently one of your city firefighters, and I have been for the last 10 years. I have a wife and 3 children. I want to address the 3 issues that I feel are most important to me and should be to the residents of Traverse City. The first one is the public services. In his first address to the city commission, after 10 days on the job, the interim city manager said, he didn't say, you don't have a canopy problem, you don't have a housing problem, you don't have a climate problem. He said, in 5 years, 1/3 of your workforce is going to retire. Where are you going to get them from? And how is that going to affect the people in this community that pay taxes and depend on those services? I do believe there are issues that need to be addressed related to housing. Is that going to come off the backs of the residents and splitting their homes in half? I don't think so. But I do recognize that there is a need that we need to address, and our city commission is taking steps towards that in the right direction right now, and I want to continue that. I also want to make sure that we're addressing the infrastructure.
Thank you. Caroline.
I am Caroline Kennedy, your Residents First Quality of Life candidate. I have a master's degree in public administration and a career of 34 years in public policy. Public policy, when done right, does equal quality of life. And that's why it's been my passion. My career began with 10 years on Michigan State Senate staff. Then I lobbied for protecting the rights of local government at our state capitol. I provided education to elected officials and city managers in northern Michigan for 14 years. I worked for Oak Rapids Village Council, Planning, and Parks Commission. I served on 2 housing boards and many others over the years. Issues: housing and homelessness. Housing is an economic issue. We have tools and we need to jump. Basic infrastructure in neighborhoods, especially clean stormwater. And 3, downtown funding. While a key issue, we have time to consider options and reach consensus as a community.
You. Mary.
Good evening. I'm Mary Mills. Thank you so much for the library, for the League of Women Voters, and for you, the residents, for hosting this. I think this is very important that you get an opportunity to hear what we have to share, our beliefs. I like to say that if you can remember when South Airport Road in Lafreniere was a 4-way stop, and when you went up Lafreniere, it was a dirt road, that's when I arrived in Traverse City. I came here to study at NMC, and I've lived, married and raised my family here. I am currently on the City Master Plan Leadership Team as the city resident. The top 3 issues for me, first of all, is zoning, housing, also TIF, and I can say also our pines. I think we need to address that, and I think we need all voices at the table to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Minkin. I'm originally from a one-stoplight town in Michigan's western Upper Peninsula, born and raised. I graduated as a teacher from Northern Michigan University, went to law school, earned my Juris Doctor while working for the Michigan House of Representatives. I've lived in Traverse City now for the past 10 years. And the reason I'm running for city commission is because I never thought I'd leave the Upper Peninsula growing up. It's a place I always wanted to live, thought I would come back to, but I came to Traverse City because of work, and I've been in the financial industry for 11 years, and I've come to love this city and want to live here the rest of my life. I'm running for city commission because I've had to watch countless friends and acquaintances have to be pushed further outside of town or leave the area altogether because they will never be able to raise a family here or establish a career here. Top 3 issues pressing the city are affordability, cost of living, and quality of life. The status quo is not working in our city, and I hope from the questions I answered tonight, I'll show you how I plan to address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Shay.
My name's Shay O'Brien. I currently serve on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. I serve as the Vice Chair for the Farmers Market Advisory Board. I am the volunteer coordinator for the Traverse Heights Community Garden. And upon marrying my lovely wife, I found myself marrying into a permanent volunteer position at the Deno's Museum Center. I ran for mayor 4 years ago, and I'm largely running for the same reasons that I ran then, which is that I want to bring a pragmatic approach to local governance. I want to build upon our successes and learn from our mistakes, and I want to do all of that to create a city that it welcomes everybody. I've worked in nonprofits, I've worked in for-profits, but most importantly, I've always worked and lived in Traverse City, and I think now is the time for me to work for Traverse City. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Merrick.
2 years ago, I ran for city commission, and I want to thank the league because 2 years ago, I was conducting this interview through Zoom, and it's great to see everyone here. It's great to be in person, have these debates. Sustainable solutions. That's my campaign that I'm running on right now, and that's what the answers that you're going to hear from me throughout our event today. I just got married a year ago. I'm just celebrating my 1-year anniversary this last weekend. And I'm looking forward to having sustainable solutions for my family for years to come. I want to help out. I want to take my resume being a person that's gone off into industry and boomerang back here, being an active member in our neighborhood environments as Slabtown Vice President. I'm your candidate that wants to take sustainable solutions, and I want to make sure that our city is great for families for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather.
Good evening. My name is Heather Shaw. I am born and raised in the Traverse City area, and for nearly 6 years I served on the Planning Commission, which is the reason I'm here tonight. Last July, I resigned my position on the commission because I disagreed strongly with the upzoning package process. This is the biggest, most impactful residential zoning reform Traverse City has ever seen, and it's worth getting right. The second impact we're facing is a fragile infrastructure. It's operational, but it's not optimal. And another fragility in our infrastructure extends to the city staff. 1/3 of senior staff is retiring in 5 years. We've been without a city manager for 6 months and a year without a treasurer. But there's good news. Last night, the city commission approved the appointment of Liz Vogel, and I look forward to having a woman in that position for the first time, I think, in city history.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Treadwell. I wasn't born in Traverse City, but I've lived here over 28 years. I went to TCAP schools before going on to NMC and MSU, Go Green. I currently serve as a city commissioner, planning commissioner, Parks and Rec Board, Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm the chair of the Master Plan Leadership Team. And I'm looking to bring that experience that I've learned over the past couple years to helping guide Traverse City through its rather transitional phase over the next few months to couple years as we're seeking a new city manager. We're replacing many city staff. We've got a senior center and Fish Pass project to complete over the next 2 years. And as far as other issues, I'm hoping to address our housing crisis as well as protecting our waterways.
Thank you. All right, on to questions. So the first one is regarding TIF. And the question goes, do you support the expansion of TIF? And please explain why or why not. Ken.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first on this one. TIF is probably one of the most important funding tools that the city has and has utilized over the last 26 years to pay for very important community development projects related to infrastructure. Anyone can see all the bridge work and the major construction projects that have been going on downtown for the last few years. Those are funded through TIF. Now, a lot of people have frustration with the DDA who controls that TIF money. I'm not in favor of throwing away TIF just because people don't like the DDA. Administrations change. That board can be replaced. They answer to the commission approves their budget, the commission appoints them. I think this is more of a matter of bringing the DDA to heel than it is throwing away TIF, because it is important and taxes will more than likely go up if it's not continued.
Thank you, Ken. Carolyn, same question, Caroline.
Oh, I have the benefit of Mr. Funk's very thoughtful response. I agree with Ken on just about everything he said. Have the benefit to add that, $2 million goes away without TIF. And that's the only money we get from those outside sources that come into our community and put wear and tear on our infrastructure. What happens without that funding from outside? It comes out of our general fund. Who puts money into our general fund? We do. So it's less money without TIF, not more money. Now, can we look at TIF and rearrange how it's been done? Yes, we can. Can we have a community discussion about that? Yes.
Thank you, Mary. Chris? I'm sorry, Mary.
Mary. Well, I am not for the extension of TIF. I believe that back in '97, the DDA and the city made a promise to our residents that this would be a 30-year process. The DDA has done wonderful things. They have a lot to be proud of, but extending it, no. It is time right now. There's a current fund balance at the end of June of over $4 million, projected balance of over $8 million as of the end of '24. 100% of all the new builds have gone 100% to the DDA, nothing to the city. So we can restructure, do a new TIF, but I think the people need a voice. Thank you.
Chris?
I strongly oppose the renewal of TIF 97, at least in its current form. Again, it was a 30-year promise, not a 60. And allowing TIF to expire allows more flexibility in the funds to be used, because right now the TIF district taxation has been frozen, but the city's budget hasn't been frozen. It continues to go up. Many city employees can't even live within the city limits. We're having trouble recruiting police officers and firefighters. And so by allowing TIF to expire, that allows those funds to revert to the general fund, because as of right now, who's paying for the increased, disproportionately for the increase in city budget? Residential taxpayers. So by allowing TIF to expire, that money goes back to the general fund. We can allocate money back to downtown, so, sorry,
Thank you.
45 seconds.
It's not a long time, is it?
Nope, and I like to talk.
Shay?
I like to talk too. In the grand scheme of things, $2.5 million coming back into the general fund of nearly $25 million in operating is a drop in the bucket. Like Caroline said, we lose that matching $2 million, and Ken said that too. We lose the matching $2 million from the other taxing jurisdictions. That puts the city in an either-or situation long-term, where they either fix the road in Traverse Heights neighborhood, or they fix the road downtown. Chances are they're going to fix the road downtown because it's an economic driver.
Thank you. Merrick?
So I think we brought TIF 97 was a sustainable solution to bring downtown into a sustainable environment. I think that we need to focus on making sure that we keep downtown that vibrant core that all of us share. That we have 5 counties that share downtown Traverse City, and I advocate for a TIF share. I think that there is a reason for a time and a place for TIF, and I think that I would argue that I want TIF to expire if it's in its current form, but I want a TIF share with it focus on taking care of the downtown projects that we have, like the Boardman Ottaway, Lower Boardman Ottaway project. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Yes, I think that my personal opinion might be moot on this issue because I think it'll go to a public referendum. But what's wrong with TIF? TIF takes our taxes and earmarks them for special interests, meaning downtown businesses. It's an urban renewal program, and it's been very successful, but it's a preferential use of our taxes. If TIF disappeared, 52%, which is what's generated in the city, would go back to the general fund, and it could be publicly debated what happens to that. The DDA could become a staff position. The 48% that we'd lose control over would go back to NMC, it would go to the Commission on Aging, it would go to Beta, and it would go to the county. The money's not going to go away, it just comes out of the dark and into the light.
Thank you. Mitch?
Yes. TIF was originally set up as a program with a specific timeline. However, looking across at other communities, TIF programs that were set up similarly were also extended. And I can look at, say, what Auburn Hills has done with creating a new downtown, essentially, and have revitalized part of their community. If somebody thinks that we should still let TIF sunset, I'd like to see some examples of communities that have let it die, because at present, TIF is the only tool that we can use to prioritize investment in our downtown, just like Traverse City prioritizes investment compared to the rest of the county by paying higher taxes.
Thank you. Jackie?
Yes. TIF is such a popular tool. There are over 600 TIF districts in the state of Michigan. And ours are among the very few that don't have any revenue sharing with the city where they are present. I think that TIF has done a wonderful job of improving conditions in our downtown, but I do believe that it is gaining some of its revenue at the cost of supporting things that the voters approved, like the Commission on Aging, like veterans, like Beta, like NMC. And I would like to see those funds returned to their original millages.
Thank you. All right, next question. Caroline, you will be first on this question. What do you see will be the impact of blanket upzoning on Traverse City?
Well, there won't be blanket upzoning in Traverse City. This is an issue that I think people raised unnecessary levels of alarm about. And that may have been the process from the Planning Commission to the City Commission. But the City Commission and the Planning Commission itself had looked at each one of those individually, and they discussed each one of those individually. And that is an ongoing process with the City Commission right now. Now's the time to get involved so that you can actually learn what each one of those will do and have your own voice heard at the City Commission.
Mary?
Upzoning in Traverse City has, in my opinion, will have a detrimental effect on the neighborhoods and on our city. As being a member of the Master Plan Leadership team, one of the things that the Michigan Planning Enabling Act states is that when presented with long-term decisions, community leaders should use the master plan to ensure their decisions are consistent with the visions of the Traverse City residents. Zoning and the master plan must be in sync, and these are not in sync. They will create more heat islands. There will be mature trees removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
I don't think blanket upzoning will happen just because the community has made their voice clear, and I think the Planning Commission and City Commission and those running for the commission understand that. There are some aspects of it that bear interest, but for the most part, blanket upzoning will create a less desirable community. I think what makes Traverse City unique is its community. This is a town that people want to live in, and it's such drastic changes, they're not going to make the community more desirable to live in. It's going to tear apart the fabric of our community. There are housing needs that need to be met, but I don't think destroying the nature of our residential zones is going to, make that happen. Thank you.
Shay?
Wow. I don't, like Caroline said, blanket upzoning isn't going to happen. But I think when you consider that anything having an impact on our built environment is probably a decade out, it's probably not a bad thing to remove these barriers. I remember in the 90s, my parents talking to me about how we have a housing shortage right now. That was in the 90s, and we're just now talking about doing this thing. I don't think it'll have an impact. Whatever the City Commission passes is not going to change things. It's hard to join a community when you can't find a place to live, though.
Merrick?
So I've knocked on over 800 doors so far, and this has been a recurring theme of people being concerned about the upzoning ordinances. And I think that we're approaching this the wrong way. I think we need to create sustainable partnerships with the county, and that through regional regional solutions with regional transportation to get people to downtown to live outside. We have 1,000 units of apartments being built outside. I think that we also need to look at a tax structure to make it more amenable for our developers to convert their short-term rentals into long-term rentals. I think that's a low-hanging fruit right there, that if we make it a little bit more incentivized for them, that we could have that many more houses available in our supply.
Thank you. Heather?
Yes, there are still blanket upzonings in the proposal before the City Commission, and the rush to pass these without the safeguards of form-based code has the appearance of driving up values of personal investment opportunities. In a recent study published in the Urban Affairs Review, it found no effect on zoning changes on housing supply over 5 years. No effect on from zoning changes. Instead of falling prices, you got higher prices. Prices rose on the parcels and in the projects that were upzoned. Even if zoning increases the amount of housing units, new development takes many years to get underway, and the speculation will come first. These need to go back to the Planning Commission.
Mitch?
Yeah, so first I'd say that the term blanket upzoning is misleading. We aren't zoning for blankets, and upzoning, all except for one provision that might not even be considered next month by the City Commission, don't allow buildings to be built that are any larger than our current zoning code allows. It just allows you to build, say, a duplex rather than a large single-family house in neighborhoods that already have dozens of duplexes and where we historically allowed them. As far as the process being rushed, some of these proposals were brought to the Planning Commission a year and a half ago, but were then put off for reasons known only to our planning staff.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thank you. I think the sad fact is we don't really know what impact upzoning will have on our community because it's only happened in much, much larger metropolitan areas so far. So when our Planning Commission cannot answer the questions, how many homes, at what price, and when, my antenna go up. I think that upzoning needs to be better coordinated with master planning so that we have agreed upon a vision for our community before we make any radical zoning changes.
Ken?
What do I think the effects of blanket upzoning are going to be? There's going to be good and there's going to be bad associated with that. But I think that the fear of what the bad things that could happen shouldn't outweigh the positive aspects of what this can provide to our community, more places for people to live who, I don't think it's going to affect the homelessness, but it's going to affect the people that want to live here and work in our service industry and become our neighbors. I think about a lot whether or not we live with people or we just live next to them. I mean, this is a big deal, and that's why so many people are passionately speaking out about it, but there's going to be good and bad consequences associated with this. But I think let's take this in a positive aspect. I'm upset that it was rushed.
Thank you. Okay, another housing question here. How do you plan on increasing housing so that young people can stay in the region? And how will you balance both creating these housing options and protecting neighborhoods? Mary.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that has been tossed around quite a bit is affordability. And Traverse City right now, we are a tourist destination. We've been named #1 by Airbnb. We have a high market rate here. The current zoning will not provide for affordability. So we need to work with Housing North, Woodall Cooper, the Housing Commission to make that a reality so that we can provide places for our young. Currently, there's quite a bit of office space that is empty. Maybe we should be looking at that and how to convert that into housing. Thank you.
Chris.
The most straightforward approach to getting more housing in this area is to eliminate short-term rentals. They're the bane of existence in housing availability across the country, and many municipalities across the country are enacting more strict regulations or outright trying to get rid of them. New York just recently passed a model where only short-term rentals that are owner-occupied, which is the whole point of Airbnbs in the first place, is, hey, my kid went off to college, we have an empty room, let's rent it out to some tourists to make a little extra income. They're a lot more controlled and better than houses being bought out or apartments or condos downtown. And Traverse City can't grow outwards. We're surrounded by charter townships. And so every unit matters. And when they're taken up by short-term rentals, that's less for long-term residents.
Thank you. Shay?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How do you plan on increasing housing so that young people can stay in the region? And how can you balance both creating housing options and protecting neighborhoods?
Wow, this is related to the question before about zoning, isn't it? I mean, I would be open to allowing ADUs in backyards, splitting lots. My parents own a lot in Traverse Heights neighborhood, and it's a baseball field. It could be split in two, and you could build another house back there, and guess who's living there? I am. So that's something. As far as the short-term rentals go, they're not allowed in the residential neighborhoods. If they are happening, they're illegal, and that takes neighbors to report it. There is an ordinance in place that doesn't allow them currently. So I think a good place to start is the zoning amendments.
Thank you. Merrick?
So I think to create a sustainable housing stock that we need to work with the lawmakers, with Representative Kofia having signed into law the TIF being able to be used for homes in the downtown area. I think we can find creative fiscal policy and law policy to create more stock in our housing. I touched on wanting to figure out a way to make having our short-term rentals be into long-term rentals. I think that right there is a very good policy that we need to go through. And I think that we need to investigate with our master plan. What do we want our city to look like? Because I think that's other part of the supply. We have over 1,000 new apartments being created around the city. What do we want our city to look like? I mean, that's something that we need to think about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Last night at the City Commission meeting, Yarrow Brown from Housing North and Warren Call from TC Connect introduced a package of tools that the state has sent out to communities across Michigan to help support and pay for attainable housing. That's where we need to start. And send that upzoning package back to the Planning Commission and focus on these new tools to create housing on our corridors where we have the infrastructure to support the density and that is already zoned for density.
Thank you. Mitch?
Yes. With our last corridor plan, looking at 8th Street, we recognized the opportunity for greater multifamily housing, and we now have Ruth Park and Common Grounds that have gotten developed, and people are living there. Through our master plan, we're also recognizing that 14th Street, Garfield, and the Munson Avenue corridors are areas that have higher intensity development right now that might have the occasional house, but they aren't part of the fabric of our neighborhoods, and those would be prime areas that we can have more multifamily housing and thus create more housing stock for Traverse City.
Thank you. Jackie?
I believe that housing stock for Traverse City should be evaluated on a regional basis. You know, we are 8 square miles, and we can't fit everybody into those 8 square miles. But if we look at housing supply on a regional basis and integrate it with better public transportation planning, I believe we can get a long ways toward solving the supply problem.
Thank you. Ken?
I think that zoning is a very powerful and important tool to protect neighborhoods and allow growth where it belongs and it should be. There are lots that can be split and should be split. There are new developments waiting to happen, but we're commissioners and we're not necessarily housing experts. We want to be rounded on everything. And we need to be able to reach out to people like Yarrow Brown, like the commission's doing right now, to our experts in housing and creating those. It's going to happen at a local level, and it is going to happen at a regional level. So I think the best way to go about it is to first through zoning.
Thank you. Caroline?
Well, exciting news for the pilot ordinance that's coming up. That's payment in lieu of taxes. That will help us provide some more workforce housing within this community and the ability to work better with our regional partners. Secondly, the tools from last night's City Commission meeting are not new. They've been used in other communities within this region successfully. Northern Home CDC has been using them in Petoskey, Charlevoix, and East Jordan. So we should be jumping on that right away. I don't know why we haven't. To protect our current neighborhoods, we want to look at the stormwater. We want to look at design standards, no more boxes. And we want to look at sightlines and step downs. There's a hierarchy of needs in our current neighborhoods, and we need to
Thank
address
you.
those first.
All right, next question. Chris, you will begin this question. Do you support non-city residents serving on city boards like the DDA?
No. I think as of right now, they can't serve on city boards, and for good reason. Now, I'm not aware if they're allowed to serve on the DDA board, but I would say no. Let them run for their own boards where they live, because I suspect the only people who would be running for the DDA board from outside of our community would be business owners or people with other interests. Now, some would argue, hey, they put a business in our community, they deserve to have a voice. But I think the voices belong to the people who actually live and reside and pay taxes within the city. We're the ones doing the business owners a favor by making such a good community for their businesses to thrive. So, like I said, it's great that they want to open a business here. I support it, but move here and have a voice.
Thank you. Shay?
Total opposite. I do support non-city residents being on boards like the DDA because they do have a vested interest. They pay taxes. They opened a business. They're doing us a favor by opening a small business, a locally owned business. They may not live in the city, but they do live locally. So yeah, I support it, plain and simple.
Thank you. Merrick?
So yes, I do support that. I want to take a moment to talk about something one of our other commissions can do. As a city commissioner, I want to task our Human Rights Commission to develop a sustainable strategy for our homeless population. I think that that's something that we need more work and more input from people. I love telling people, get on a board, be a part of the conversation, because when you're part of the conversation, you're part of the solution. So that's what I want to do, is task our boards, task our citizens with coming up with those great sustainable solutions to tackle our housing problems, our homeless problems, and everything else that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, I believe city boards should be, there should be city citizens on city boards. The DDA is its own thing, so it has its own rules. Now, were the DDA to become a department of the city rather than its own thing, then I do believe that it should be, it should have city residents on it. Just because you have a business in Traverse City doesn't mean that you experience the effect of businesses on Traverse City.
Thank you.
Live here.
Mitch?
The DDA isn't unique as a city board with non-city residents. The Human Rights Commission also has a couple non-resident seats. Most importantly, the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee or the Joint Rec Authority have non-city residents that serve on them because those oversee natural areas that extend or are completely outside of the city. So you need to have people that live nearby and experience them. In the DDA, the structure is set, recognizing that there are specific constituencies of city residents, downtown residents, city business owners in the downtown area, and people that work in the downtown area.
Thank you. Jackie?
I believe we should be aiming for absolutely the most talented, best credentialed, and most committed people to serve on our boards. In the case of the DDA, I believe that a business owner who lives outside the city limits should be considered and eligible for that. But again, I think our boards are so critical to the health and communication within our city. They need to have skin in the game and be the best possible folks.
Thank you. Ken?
This completely depends on what the board is, like the DDA. You don't necessarily have to live in the city to be on the DDA, but you could be a business owner in town. People out in Garfield Township whose tax money is taken by TIF can be represented by their participation on the DDA. Human Rights Commission. Just because you live in Traverse City doesn't mean that the effect of human rights doesn't affect people outside the city. So it's important that they're represented too. Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, and then the Garfield Township Association with the city. You know, we have to work with our neighbors. Not everybody can live in the city, and these boards that extend outside should have representation that is appropriate.
Thank you. Caroline?
The DDA and other board seats are statutorily prescribed. It's important to know that some of the responses here tonight are unintentionally misinformed. But I will repeat what Mr. Funk has said, and that is that it is important for us to work with our neighbors and to have the appropriate representation on those boards.
Thank you. Mary?
I believe our city boards need to be represented by our city residents. Now, the DDA is a separate thing. You know, if in its current form, I do agree that if you are a business owner, that you should have a seat at the table. But otherwise, it should be made up of city residents.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to start with Shay. Do you support live streaming or recording all city boards, committees, and ad hocs?
City boards, ad hocs, what was the other one?
Committees, all city boards, all city committees, all city ad hoc committees.
To an extent. It depends on what city staff can take on. I think under FOIA, they are required to be recorded and live streamed for the most part. City commission meetings are at least. Ad hocs, that seems like a lot. That's a lot of work. You know, they're always open to the public. City has improved its communications. There's a great newsletter out there that they do. That wasn't a thing 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So I think they do a pretty good job with communications. Could it be improved? Sure, but it all depends on staff capacity.
Thank you. Merrick?
Thank you for the question, and I do support live streaming as much as we can. I do want to highlight how great our technology is at the city center and our government. We have a great ArcGIS experiment with showing off all of our trees. We show off all of our tax parcels. We have a great staff, and I applaud them for the ideas they bring and the initiatives they take on. And I think I want to be that person, your city commissioner that supports our city staff and that brings those new technology to the forefront so that we can be a city that serves our people and gets information out in a much speedier way. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
In a perfect world, absolutely. I'm echoing my predecessors here, and it's tough. It's staff time, it's technology. And I'm also echoing Mr. Merrick here saying, or Mr. Roman, that what we have right now as far as technology in the city is pretty amazing as far as the maps and the zoning tools that you can access online. They've really done a great job of improving that and bringing it up, surpassing the up-to-datedness of our tools in the last 5 years.
Thank you. Mitch?
As someone that serves on 8, 10, I lose count at times, different city boards, I really wish that a lot of more of my meetings were accessible to the public. Frankly, I wish that there were more opportunities, as we had during the pandemic, for people that, because they're sick or otherwise cannot physically attend a meeting, to be able to still give public comment, or as the case of somebody that serves on a board, if, say, you have COVID, you should be able to attend without being in the room, but that requires a change of state law. as far as all city boards and commissions, I recognize that, say, the Parks and Rec Board might want to have a meeting at a park if they are trying to see how it should be best redesigned, and that might not be practically live streamed.
Thank you. Jackie?
I think this is really a question about two things, transparency and cost, and we need to balance those two. I am generally in favor of more transparency and more communication. I would also suggest, while our city technology is really great, there might be some room for improvement in the search function within the city website to be able to more easily locate what you're looking for.
Thank you. Ken?
I think everyone kind of hit this. Most of these boards, meetings, ad hocs, all these are covered under the Open Meetings Act, and they have to be made public. Live streaming, yeah, definitely comes down to cost, and I think this question really is rooted in what Jackie just said, and like people's frustration with lack of transparency in government in general. People want to believe that they're represented by their elected representatives, and when you start to lose that trust, you get questions like this. So I'm in favor of transparency, and I hope that everyone agrees with that.
Caroline?
So, in the course of my career, I have taught transparency laws to elected officials and to department heads. So, Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act. The city of Traverse City, I'm happy to tell you, is in compliance with those. Do we wish with better technology and with a budget that can match it, can we make it even better and more accessible than law requires? That would be fantastic, and we would be for it. But we're getting there. And the Bay Brief is one good resource. If you're interested in something that's going on, you'll be able to find it, and you'll be able to get there.
Thank you. Mary?
I think as much as possible, especially commission meetings. They should be televised, live streamed, be able to have access to that. I know it is also a cost factor, but I have to echo the other candidates with transparency. We want to be able to find out what exactly is going on. We hear there were all these meetings and this particular item on zoning was discussed, but yet we can't find where that actually was. So more transparency, live stream as much as possible, and I would have to say the search function on the website needs to be improved as well.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm in agreement with everybody else here, and I think that everybody favors transparency in government, right? It's critical to a democracy. I think the city does a very good job in, its technology and live streaming as many of its meetings as possible. I'm very impressed with it and the staff who run it. Obviously, as technology increases, becomes easier to use, possibly with the use of artificial intelligence, making things more automated, obviously that will make transparency easier. So, but it's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having more avenues of exploring city business. Like I said, I think the city does a very good job. Now, in terms of transparency in the city officials and, their day-to-day operations, that's a whole nother conversation, which unfortunately I don't have time for. But always feel free to come up to me afterwards and talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Merrick, you will start this next question. A response to the pressures of climate change should be at the heart of many of our decisions. How would you prioritize things the city can do to help with a sustainable, resilient future?
Thank you for the question. So I am an energy economist. I enjoy the evolution of how energy has come from the 1800s all the way up until now. Back in 2010, our solar panels were thick. Now they're 13 years later, they're much thinner. I think that we are going through a technology revolution, and I want to make sure that our city, we don't, not a lot of people know about this, but for TCLP, we offer 3% low-interest loans for 10 years for a boiler that goes out. We can replace all of our energy carbon-producing equipment with electrical and renewable energy. I think those are the solutions that we need to talk about. That's easy for people to get. Not this esoteric, we'll be green by 2040. We need solutions
you.
now.
Heather?
Trees. I think one of the most urgent needs for Traverse City is not only to plant new trees, but to conserve our mature trees. Trees help us adapt to climate change. They shade the streets, they clean the air, they slow traffic down, and they deal with our increasingly intense rain downpours. One of the reasons that we have so much trouble with urban flooding is because so much land has been paved over for streets and bigger houses and parking. We have to preserve our existing forests. It takes years for a young tree to absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than what's released, and it takes years and years for a new tree to reach the rainwater absorption potential of its elders.
Thank you. Mitch?
Yes, addressing the climate future of Traverse City and the world is not one single issue that has one single solution. There's a lot of things that we can do, whether it's improving the resiliency of our coastline for storm events, better managing our stormwater so we have less flooding along Kids Creek or the Boardman River. Also working to protect our natural areas, including trees and parks. But there are other aspects, like looking at our transportation landscape, how we can get people to live closer to where they work and to better utilize our public transit system.
Thank you. Jackie?
I think we have a huge advantage in this, in that we have our very own electrical utility. And we need to be sure that we're engaging in that in a way that will support climate preparedness. Trees, absolutely. Foresters, preservation of existing trees. I think also permeable surfaces. You know, one of the kind of insidious things about the zoning regulations had to do with an increase in impervious surfaces in our residential areas. So I would be careful about things like that, and I would work hard to enhance our environment.
Thank you. Ken?
We have a lot of different green initiatives, and I think that's fantastic. I like the idea of advancing these ideas because we only get one planet, right? So I wish we could do things like get the city, we have lots of bulldozers, I shouldn't say bulldozers, front-end loaders, plow trucks. Why can't they run on compressed natural gas? Why do we just burn it when it comes off the wastewater treatment plant? Why don't we capture it and use it for heat? I'd like to make this our culture rather than just goals that we strive. When we think about what our culture is, this is Traverse City. This is what we do. When we build a new street, we plant trees. We use permeable surfaces. Thank you.
Caroline?
Yeah, a few years ago, I was at a Michigan Municipal League forum where they were exploring advances in technology for this type of thing. It's out there for governments. There are governments who have made additional advances, and we can reach out to those and we can find out which ones have worked and which ones would be affordable for us to ease into our budget. Electric vehicles, and then we need to look at it through every department lens, and they need to be looking at it with everyone we contract with to make sure that those contractors are honoring those values as well.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I'm going to approach this from tying in the current proposed zoning proposals. You know, we are working towards being more green. But with these zoning proposals, we're going to be taking down our mature trees. We're going to be increasing our impervious surfaces. We're increasing heat islands. And so it seems that we are doing the opposite of what we are trying to accomplish. If we are trying to be more green and more climate conscious, why are we reversing backwards when it comes to zoning? We're creating just the opposite. We plant a tree, we've all seen them in the green bags along the side, but when you have side of the road, when you see these mature trees.
Thank you, Mary. Chris?
Environmental protection is one of the most important things facing the city. Part of why I love living here is being in the outdoors, being 30 minutes from a national park. More renewable energy policies is always good. We need to focus less on being car-centric, focus more on public transportation and biking. Right, one of the things coming up right now is adding a third parking deck to the city, which will not really benefit us because it's not really for the benefit of the city residents. It's going to encourage more cars, more congestion, more waiting, which means more pollution, both of the environmental kind and of the noise kind. So, and promote policies that have less reliance on tourism. More tourists that we shove into town, more airplanes, more cars, more crowding, more pollution, more wear and tear on the environment. So that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you. Shay?
I'm all about succession planning. We know that city vehicles are going to become outdated at some point. We should be planning, looking into how much it would cost to replace it with an electrical vehicle. They're out there. Like, we know that you can get a police car that runs on electricity. I think trees, succession planning for trees, we know that trees have a lifespan, so we should be planning to replace those trees at some point. We should be replacing them earlier rather than when it falls down or when we cut it down. Any city-owned properties should have more trees planted on them. Our parks could use a lot more trees in them, if you ask me. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question, Heather, you get to go first on this one. Traverse City Tourism does much to market the city and region, yet Traverse City only realizes 20% of the tourism revenue. How can we make peace with the impacts of tourism and the needs of our year-round residents?
Ooh. Well, remember when Pure Michigan, maybe they still say it, come here, spend your money, then go home. That messaging definitely needs to change. We have a problem with our aging demographic here. We need to attract younger people. We need to retain people who have grown up here. Does an attractive downtown help retain and attract? Definitely. We need to keep that going, but we also need to add things like housing opportunities, better wages, and better childcare.
Mitch?
Yes. TC Tourism and Pure Michigan are both good campaigns, especially in a tourist-dependent lakeshore community. We are currently a little limited by state law, and something that I'd like to see changed is the bed tax for hotels that currently funds Pure Michigan and TC Tourism. If that money could be used, in addition to promoting the region, also be used for infrastructure and other upgrades that are directly related to the costs that tourism puts on our community, such that if a hotel wants to upgrade a sewer connection, that you can use the hotel tax that they already pay to pay for that.
Thank you. Jackie?
Well, I am certainly in agreement that some of the solutions to this have to be happening at the state level because our options are a bit limited. But one of the things that I think should be explored is that apparently short-term rentals are not subject to the bed tax. And so they, as you know, represent a big share of our tourism right now. And I think that they should be paying their fair share.
Thank you. Ken?
A lot of these different candidates kind of said things that I believe very strongly with in regard to this. Traverse City Tourism brings people here and they contribute to the business and the tourist economy, but they don't contribute anything else to the community. They don't contribute to infrastructure, and they don't contribute to the wear and tear on our everyday life. So there are counties in Southeast Michigan that are exempted from the Visitors and Convention Tourist Bureau creation law that allows for this Convention and Visitors Bureau money to go towards tourism. In those Southeast Michigan counties, that goes towards bed taxes that support those communities. We need to do that kind of stuff here. And we have to do that with our state partners, state representatives, state senators. They're the ones that are going to help this happen. But I want to see Traverse City Tourism contribute its fair share, and that's how we do it.
Thank you. Caroline?
I agree with Mitch Treadwell and Ken Funk here. I lived here in 1980 when downtown wasn't thriving and wasn't vibrant, and we did need that tourism badly, and we relied more heavily on it then. But it's been a lot of decades, and the pendulum swings back and forth. We need a breath. We need to take a breath. And yes, dedicating that bed tax that exists and enacting a bed tax for the short-term rentals that can be recycled into our community that supports all of those tourists, that would be a great benefit for all of us.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, currently, the city of Traverse City has a little over 1,000 guest rooms. In the surrounding area, it's 5,000 plus with another 800 more rooms available that are going to be available the next 2 to 3 years. Currently, it's my understanding that the bed tax, the 5% tax, goes entirely to TC Tourism. Now, we did hear this year that the visits, we have 8.9 million visits a year. Cherry Capital Airport increased their flights by 18%. So we do need some of these funds, I feel, that goes towards our infrastructure and keeping our downtown and our city with the upkeep. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
There's nothing wrong with tourism in general. It's generally good for the area. It provides income for businesses, provides diverse groups of people visiting our area, which provides different perspectives. But there's a balance to tourism. It's a balance of allowing tourists to come into the community and the quality of life on locals. And over the past 10 years that I've lived here, I feel like the balance has been way, way, way too much in favor of the tourists who come here, and Traverse City residents in particular pay an outsourced cost of that tourism compared to other regions of the area. So I'm in very large agreement that we should petition our elected officials at the state level for us to enact some kind of tourist tax and find other creative ways of passing on the costs for our local infrastructure and way of living to the people who visit the area, because they have an outsized impact.
Shay?
Agreed with everyone. One thing that I would say that I think a little bit differently is I would like to work with TC Tourism and maybe ask them to put out a campaign of come work in Traverse City, or a friend shared with me, bring your bike. I mean, we all know that vehicle traffic picks up quite a bit in the summer. Why not bring your bike and get around? It's much easier, it's safer, it's more fun. So those are some things that I would think about.
Eric?
So when the Wall Street Journal article came out about Traverse City being a destination spot for tourism, I was first on there to talk about how Traverse City is it's great views, but we have a great workforce here. We have a wonderful community college. We have a wonderful businesses here, and my campaign is about fill our downtown with economic development. I think that tourism serves as a great attraction for people to come in, but as a your city commissioner, I definitely want to work with the chamber to make sure that we have businesses come here. And businesses bring their families, the families put their kids through schools, and I think that is why we have tourism. And we want to have a sustainable culture, and that's my campaign right there. Thank you.
Mitch, we're getting down to you to answer first on this next question. And it's one of the same ones we asked the mayors about homelessness. And those experiencing homelessness have been more visible than ever this summer. What is the one thing the city could do to respect the rights of those living without shelter while still respecting the concerns of the neighbors and businesses that are impacted?
Well, as perhaps the only person behind this desk with lived experience as a homeless person, it would be hard for me to say just one thing. But if I have to choose one, I'd say to expand Safe Harbor to allow it to operate year-round. Currently, it can only operate in winter months, but the city has the authority to amend its special land use permit to extend that to be a year-round facility.
Thank you. Jackie?
I think a concept that has a lot of potential is the one that's being incorporated in Annika Place 2, where housing for the unhoused is combined with availability of social services. So it's a one-stop, everything that's needed to return to employment, return to housing is available right there.
Thank you. Ken?
How do we address the challenges to protect these homeless people's rights? They're very generously being allowed to stay in the Pines right now because they are trespassing. Situations are being addressed to make it safer for them out there because it is mildly dangerous. Not all of them are dangerous, but some of them are. And issues to address the alcohol and the fires back there have been taken and are continuing to be taken. The city police department social worker has been doing a lot to reach out to these homeless people that are having significant issues with drug and alcohol, because a lot of their problems are related to mental health, and those are the services that they need the most. Because when these people get placed into houses, they live in that house the same way that they live out in the Pines. Their homelessness status doesn't change their behaviors. We need to address mental health.
Caroline?
Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. Those experiencing homelessness have been more visible than ever this summer. What is the one thing the city could do to respect the rights of those living without shelter while still respecting the concerns of the neighbors and the businesses that are impacted?
Okay, so I do think we're working on that pretty effectively at the moment. It is going to take time, unfortunately. We need to support the Coalition to End Homelessness and their efforts. They have a 5-year plan. I do believe that it will be effective. And in the meantime, we need to help support our partners at Safe Harbor and the Goodwill Inn. The city can only do so much for a problem that is regional. We need to work with our other governmental partners who have not provided those services and have let their homeless come here to take advantage of what we have.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, first of all, we need to remember that they're all human beings, both everyone, those in the Pines, the residents. And the city, when we went on our candidate tour, one of the things they highlighted is that in anything that the city does, they think of the health, safety, and well-being of their residents. And what I am hearing is that that is not happening in the neighborhoods that are directly adjacent to the Pines. I do believe that keeping Safe Harbor open year-round, they need shelter. Pines is not it. And there is mental health issues, there are addiction issues, and I think offering services where they can get those services would be helpful.
Thank you. Chris?
If only it was one thing we could do to fix the issue. But there's so many things that we have to do and can do. I think Safe Harbor operating year-round will get people off the streets and is better for their mental health. It starts with our community, too, providing the best schools and education to support our youth, making sure they're well-fed. Michigan Democrats have just passed meals for students. I think it's universal K through 12, so that'll help. Better funding for mental health services, including CMH. My dad was a mental health director for 25 years in the Western Upper Peninsula. Compassion and kindness from city residents. But it's also lowering the cost of living in our city. Less, as I mentioned, less tourist focus. Because do we want to be a tourist town or a town with tourists? Because the more of a tourist town we are, that's going to drive the cost of housing. It's going to drive the increased cost of goods and services. Without drastic action, the unhoused population is just going to continue growing year after year.
Shay?
I agree with Mitch I think Caroline pointed out that opening Safe Harbor year-round is probably the best step that we can take, and the city does have control over that. I will say supporting Ryan Hannon at Goodwill is super important because they are working on having this be the last year of the Pines. So that is something that the city can do. There's not a whole heck of a lot other than the city itself can do to, protect, sorry.
So I'll take you up on that. So there's a lot that we can do, actually. There's a lot of money that's been coming out. Munson just got a $5 million grant from the state. There was a $500,000 that came out to one of our regional homeless places that are going to place young homeless people, make sure that young homeless people have a home. I think that one of my central tenets for my campaign is to take care of the Pines. I was knocking on doors and someone found a homemade machete. And that is glaring to me. They don't feel safe having their kids walk to work. I think that we need to really make sure that we take a focus on this right here. I want to work with the homeless, or with the commission to make sure that we educate our neighborhoods with the TCPD and TCFD on what we can do for making sure we don't have resentment towards the homeless community, and that we have those sustainable solutions to get them housed, and that we show the compassion that we all want. So thank you.
Okay, Heather.
Yes, homelessness is not just a regional problem, it's all across the world, and even the great minds of California have not been able to solve this problem. I do have a few questions that maybe people have asked and maybe they've been answered, like how many of the Pines residents move back to Safe Harbor in the fall? Do any of those residents have jobs? Are there seasonal workers in there? But I support many on this, at this table that say any way the city can support Safe Harbor and goodwill to provide year-round housing would be the first thing I would do.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start again with Jackie, and this is a 30-second question because we're getting low on time here. We have to have time for our closing statements. What is one thing you would do to make Traverse City better for residents? One thing.
Only one.
What the question says.
I think that I would work hard to dial up a culture of service and respect for citizens among the city leaders and city staff. I believe that there's been a disconnect in communication and some loss of trust between the two, and I think restoring that service orientation would really be helpful.
Thank you. Ken?
One thing to make TC better for the residents, if this came down to me becoming elected as a commissioner and Proposal 3 passing for ambulance service, I would ask you to choose Proposal 3. That truly is, should be a priority for everyone. Ensuring safe and reliable ambulance service is a big deal. And no one, with soft billing, no one is going to experience the financial hardships of getting an ambulance bill from a private ambulance service.
Thank you. Caroline?
Boy, if we can only pick one, I'm going to combine mine with everybody else's. But I would say that workforce, because when we look at our aging demographic here, and we look at our nursing homes, and we look at our assisted living homes, and we look at what kind of quality of life will our residents have as our workforce continues to decline and those facilities continue to decline. We need to work on that workforce, and we can only do that through housing.
Thank you. Mary?
What I would do is work on the communication between our residents and the city. You know, part of the city commission mission statement is anything they do for the preservation and development of the city is based on extensive participation by its citizens. I don't believe that's been happening, and I would work to make sure that line of communication is open, and so that the city residents feel that they can trust that their voice will be heard by the city commission.
Thank you. Chris?
If just one thing, the cleanest and easiest proposal I would do is elimination of short-term rentals or the severe restriction of them. It's the most simple, straightforward thing the city commission could do. Within a year or two, that would create more housing opportunities for people who want to live here than just about any other solution in the short term. It's like I said, simple, clean, elegant, and would do more for housing opportunities in this city than anything else in the short and midterm.
Thank you. Shay?
The one thing I would do is set up the new city manager for success and therefore staff for success. I think they work very hard, and they work very hard for all of you. And setting up the city manager for success would make them have a great leadership, which is super important for them. Without good leadership, your staff falls apart.
Thank you. Merrick?
I think a city commissioner that goes to their neighborhood meetings, that communicates well, I think goes a long ways. I think that education, letting people know what their options are and what the real issues are, and leading by going to meetings and doing the work, I think is what would set the city up for a long, great generations ahead.
Thank you. Heather?
All great ideas. So I'll focus on stormwater. We don't have a budget for it. We've got to figure out how to find a budget for it. We need to be able to maintain and repair and construct new stormwater resiliency into our city. It's only going to get worse as the temperatures go up. The air holds more moisture, and we're just going to get more and more downpours here.
Thank you. Mitch?
I'm stealing this from another politician, but fix the damn roads. We've replaced 5 bridges in the last 3 years over the Boardman River. We're starting our crack seal program and our pavement preservation project that, if you came over from the west side, means that you need to take a detour around Cass and 8th Street, but also working with MDOT so that when they are fixing the roads that people are going through our community, we still have good bypasses that don't unduly impact our neighborhoods.
Thank you. I wish we could do all 9 of those suggestions. For the closing statement, we will go in reverse alphabetical order. And we will start with Mitchell. You have a minute for these closing statements. Mitchell, you may begin.
Yes. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for all the members of the public that are in attendance or watching this at home now or in the future. I'd like to think that in my few years on the City Commission, Planning Commission, and other boards, I've demonstrated a willingness to listen to residents, to visitors to our community, and also look beyond our community for both regional solutions and to see what has worked in other communities that can be brought back to Traverse City. If people want to discuss further with me, I make myself very available, and frankly, I'll be at the Fish Weir, since that's where I spend my night. Any of the nights in the next few days, we're doing a harvest tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Heather?
Yes, Traverse City is in a really unique position, not only because of its geography, but because of the strength and experience of its population. You can go back to Perry Hanna. He cut all the trees down, and then he looked out his front yard and he said, "Whoa, look at the view of the bay." And then he started to clean it up. He wasn't the only leadership that saw the potential of this place. We have Interlochen Center for the Arts, we've got the Traverse City Symphony, we've got the Dennis Museum, all enlightened leadership. Now we have the Blue Tech initiatives sponsored by NMC and TC Connect. This is really, really exciting. It promises that Traverse City could be a global focal point for freshwater innovation. This is so exciting. If the city could be involved in this, we could maybe get some water recycling and some real technology that could help municipalities all across the Great Lakes.
Thank you. Merrick?
Sustainable solutions. I hope I've brought my campaign with my campaign promises. I promise to tackle the homeless issue. I promise to tackle the TIF, finding an equitable solution for everyone for our downtown. And I hope that I can relay my message that affordable housing is transportation. I've tried to bring my solutions something different that's not just an echo chamber from up here, but I am trying as a future father, as someone that's grown up in this area as a native, I want to bring these sustainable solutions so that my family and our families for future generations can exist. I hope that everyone goes to my website, electmerrickroman.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Shay?
I apologize for my babble. I work with toddlers all day, so that's where I'm starting to lose it. I want to thank the League, of course, for hosting this, all of you for being here. I also want to thank my lovely wife who's in the audience, because without her support, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I also want to thank my parents for allowing me the opportunity to grow up in Traverse City, and I look forward to any clarification that anybody may need afterwards.
Thank you. Chris?
As I mentioned at the start of tonight's debate, I'm running for city commission because I truly love our city that I've called home for over a decade, and I hope I can, and I want to be living here, is that a city I can retire in, not just for me, but my friends and acquaintances. We truly live in a special place. The decisions facing the city and the commission are critical, and we need major action to better balance tourism versus local needs, and making this a community that thrives, and not just a place where bachelor and bachelorette parties come to have their parties. The actions and inactions the commission will make aren't just for a seat that lasts for 4 years. It's part of a blueprint that will outlast all of us. And the actions and inactions that the city commission takes will have rampant repercussions down the road. I don't want to pass on problems for future generations like climate change. The status quo isn't working. Cost of living is going up. The unhoused population is increasing. Without drastic action, things are going to become much more difficult. My name is Chris Minkin, and I look forward to your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
So the question I ask is, what is government for if they don't listen to their citizens? And I feel very strongly that I will be that connection to the citizens. I feel I'm very approachable. I have spoken out in support of residents. I believe in preserving our neighborhoods, protecting our environment, and promoting reasonable growth. I believe that there has been a disconnect between the city commission, planning commission, and the residents, and I think that connection needs to be reestablished. And I believe that everyone needs to have their voices heard, and that's what I plan on doing, is listening to your voice and acting on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline?
Okay, I'm Caroline Kennedy. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm married to my patient husband of 24 years, Mark, and we have a blended family of 4 children. 2 of them are still living here with us. I came to Traverse City from the UP also to attend NMC. I was an RA in West Hall to learn leadership and to earn my room and board. I went to MSU and I got trapped at the Capitol for a long time. We made our way back here in time to raise our last 2 kids in Traverse City schools, and I'm so grateful. Now that I am not working for other communities, I will put my experience to use for our residents, putting them first and maintaining quality of life here that we love. I'm not disgruntled. I'm not a one-issue candidate. This was my career, and I'm good at it. I hope you vote for me. Caroline Kennedy for Traverse City.
Thank you. Ken?
Thank you to the League for having this event. Thank you to all the residents who are concerned enough to come out and inform yourself and hopefully your neighbors because you really care. When I moved here 10 years ago to be one of your firefighters, I didn't think that I would ever get involved in politics, but I wanted to live in the city because I cared about the residents that I serve enough that I wanted to live among them. And I thought that I might have to use my voice someday. And it finally got to that point where I want to be involved to make sure that your needs are met. And however things turn out in November, I'm incredibly optimistic about the future of Traverse City, whether you elect me or not, because the 9 people up here right now have all the solutions to the challenges that are facing Traverse City. You've heard all the solutions tonight. And we're going to find compromise, and we're going to get to the bottom, find a solution, and do what's best for everybody at the end of the day. I hope you vote for me. My name's Ken Funk. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
If you've seen my signs or visited my website, you know that my motto is, she listens. But listening is only a start. It needs to be followed with a firm commitment from the listener to do further research, to balance priorities, and to always return with a respectful and a well-thought-out answer. We may not always like those individual answers, but I promise that always I will provide a listening ear, I will be accessible, and I will work toward rebuilding that trust and communication between our government and our citizens. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And thank you for listening.
Thank you to all the candidates. I think the city is going to be in good hands no matter who is elected. So please give the candidates a round of applause.
Thank you to the candidates for your participation tonight. And please go to their websites or vote411.org for more information. For information about your new voting rights, please go to michiganvoting.org or michigan.gov /SOS voting. We also have handouts at the table in the back near the entrance to this room. Election Day is Tuesday, the 7th of November, and the polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Check your clerk's website for your polling location or go to vote411.org. You can register to vote online up to the 23rd of October. After that, it must be in person. You can register to vote up to 8 p.m. on Election Day, but then you will have to be at your clerk's office. Absentee ballots are available now for the November election. You can pick them up at your clerk's office, or if you requested them by mail, they should be going out now. You can track your absentee ballot at michigan.gov/vote. To check what is on the ballot, go to michigan.gov/vote or vote411.org. The League of Women Voters of Grand Traverse Area offers programs and forums in face-to-face and visual formats. Thank you to TACM and TADL for assisting our community in expanding and strengthening citizen access. The League is a national, nonpartisan organization whose main mission is to empower and inform voters and to defend democracy. The website for our league is LWVGTA.org. Thank you again to our moderator, Jean Howard, and to the volunteers from the league that helped with this forum, and a special thank you to Charlene Krieger for organizing this event. This forum this forum is the property of the League of Women Voters of the Grand Traverse Area and may not be used without the written consent of the League. We will present a program on the 17th of October at noon focusing on regulation of septic systems, and we will have an expert panel. Please join us again. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get involved, and thank you. Good evening.